Whoa! Whoa! Yes, let it go.
Hello, hello, oh.
Pretty amazing, huh?
Okay, this is Mike Acerra with Thinking with Mike. And my special guest today is my high school physics teacher, and not only one of my favorite teachers, but I have to say probably thousands of people's favorite teacher. And I have some data to back that up. It's mostly anecdotal, but I have a huge amount of people who's a big wave of goodwill has come my way and towards Chris Chiaverina for me posting a long, not seen video produced by A&E TV. A show hosted by the great Bill Curtis. And the show was called The New Explorers. And that show featured Mr. C, Chris Chiaverina, and his partner in crime, Jim Hicks, Uncle Jim. They were physics teacher at Barrington High School when I went there. And then Chris moved on to New Trier High School, and that's when the film was made. And this film is unbelievable because it shows what Bill Curtis referred to them as revolutionary physics teachers. They brought kids to places like Six Flags Great America, the amusement park, and they'd make physics experiments and studies out of the rides at the amusement park. And this was revolutionary because it was not only fun, but other teachers started to go to this event in August, and teachers started to get trained at the amusement park to do these field trips themselves. Is that right, Chris?
That's correct.
So, Chris, welcome, and please give the audience a little explanation of who the heck you are.
Yeah, first of all, Mike, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show. Basically, I'm a physics teacher. I taught physics for 34 years, retired 19 years ago, and since then I've been doing workshops and presentations to the public in the US and Europe and Asia. I love physics. And I just can't stop doing it. It's a sickness, I guess. But during the pandemic, I did a lot of experiments. I have a lot of apparatus in the basement. So I kept busy during the quarantine, coming up with different experiments. And I'm going to share a few of them with you today.
That's right. I forgot to mention that. That's right. We are going to see two experiments from you based on optics. And I can't wait to see that. So you are, I think, a creature that I think has been more normal in human history than we like to admit. The teacher, the tinkerer, the inventor, the explainer. When we saw you as kids in high school, you seem like a very new thing for us because a lot of our teachers weren't like you and Jim. You brought a huge amount of, it's true though. I mean, we had some great teachers, but you brought a huge amount of energy and fun. And it was almost embarrassing not to get into the mood of your classroom. It was contagious, and it involved like contraptions and shooting things and blowing things up. And you famously burned your eyebrows off right before you got married, burning, I think it was gunpowder. So you weren't afraid to take a few risks and really show kids how the world works and how fun this stuff is and how they could actually understand the math behind it, the principles behind it, and that science wasn't just for the pinheads going to the elite universities. Is that a fair estimation?
I would like to think so. I'd like to think that Jim Hicks and I and my other colleagues tried to make physics accessible and enjoyable. As a best-selling author, Paul Hewitt, says that learning about the rules of nature should be a delightful experience. I couldn't agree more. Right.
And you could probably expand it to most of education, right? Learning how to read and write and mathematics, that these should all be taught right. They should all be beautiful experiences. And right. You certainly made that, you demonstrated that with what you did. And the culminating event would be you take the kids to either Fermi Lab or to the amusement park or both, and show them either high energy physics like at Fermi, which was the accelerate. How do you say it? The
Accelerator.
Yeah, the accelerator where they had that used to be the world's biggest. Now it's at CERN, I think. And they'd pulverize particles and look at what happens and try to discover there's new smaller fundamental particles, right? Like quarks and things like that. And then the Newtonian physics, you'd go to the amusement park and show about the physics of the industrial age, right? How things swing around and the centrifugal and centrifugal forces. And that blew our minds. And so it was called a revolution by Bill Curtis back in the 80s. Do you think that now that we have YouTube and we're seeing so many demonstrations now, we have access to all these demonstrations online, and the great Richard Feynman, now his great lectures are now on YouTube, so we can see some of the great lecture demonstrations, right? Is the world in a better place now, or do you have a feel for the general ignorance or enlightenment of the population and of education? What's your gut feeling about what's going on?
Okay, what I've read recently, and this is good news, is the number of students taking physics has doubled in the last 2 decades.
Wow.
And better news, perhaps, is that half of the students are women, which is just a wonderful thing, I think. So I think physics education is making progress. And I think that it will continue to do so because of the way it's being taught. I think that more and more methods of engagement are being incorporated in teaching physics as opposed to just lecturing. Nothing
right.
Lecturing, but I think the marriage of the two is the perfect combination.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. I think that what happened between the time 40 years ago, almost, when I went to school with you, and now, is that there's been whole movements. One movement in particular, the maker movement. If you've been to a maker fair or a maker fest?
Yes.
Well, maybe you see where I'm going with this. You're seeing a bunch of like little mini Jim Hickses and Chris Chiaverinas. And you see this excitement of making things, and you're seeing physics on display. And this is a new phenomenon, but it's because I like how democratic it is. That people have access to tools, they're making things, they're tinkering, they're inventing, they're playing with physics, and that's really what it should be. You should do with it, play with it, right?
Absolutely. I think that those types of experiences allow kids to ask, "What if?" They're not given direction; they're allowed to explore. And the best part, in my experience, is the best part of those types of explorations is it's a learning process for both the teacher and the student. Kids will do things with apparatus that I never, ever dreamt of doing. And so at the end of every class, I'd come away with new ideas how to present in subsequent classes. So, but I think the key to it is meaningful engagement. Just allowing students to explore and as I said, to ask, what if I do this? What if I do this?
Right. So do you think that and I don't want to hit this too hard, but do you think that most principals get that? I was in a school, I taught in the public schools in Chicago, and it was probably a very extreme case scenario, but it was I called it a teacher-proof curriculum. And you read a script, and the kids responded in a script-like manner. There was only one kind of correct response. And literally, teachers were reading scripts. I know that's an extreme example, but are there, do you think that there is this, is there at the other end of the spectrum, is that you and Jim Hicks with these wild and wacky machines and doohickeys and exploring physical phenomenon? Is what you were doing, was it improvisational, or did the principal always know what you're doing and he checked up on everything you did? You know what I'm saying? Was it I don't think you were following a strict curriculum. So what is the gray area, and where were you guys at?
In a way, we were following in the broadest sense of curriculum. There were topics that we wanted to include and should include in our program.
Right.
But the way we approached them was somewhat unorthodox, to say the least. And for the most part, we had support from the administration. In fact, they allowed us to go to the amusement park back in 1975, and we were just so pleased that they would even consider that, because you can imagine some of the comments about taking kids to an amusement park to learn physics. So we had support. Now, on the flip side of that, I've taught in several school systems, and I was going to be evaluated by a principal, and he came by, and my kids were doing an exploration. And he comes in and he looks at me and said, "I'll come back when you're teaching." And what he didn't get was that was perhaps the very best teaching I ever did, is to let the kids go and stand off to the side and be there to answer questions, of course, but not interfere with their learning.
Right. And sometimes you have to fight yourself, right? You want to, it's like being a parent. You want to hold the kid's hand and give them the answers and show them the way. But you know that if you just hold back, there's some precious things going on in their head. There's stress. There's that kind of uneasy, they're discovering, but there is that kind of moment of anxiety where they don't know if they're getting the right answers. They don't know if they're doing the right thing, right? It's a little slop. Learning can be a little sloppy when it's done right. It's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, you know, you're absolutely correct that you want to jump in sometimes and you really have to fight it, but that's not the way to do it. The way to, okay, I have to stress something. So Jim and I and Mary Beth Barrett and New Trier, we all use this approach called the learning cycle. And it all starts out with some type of engaging activity, but that feeds into an exploration. And before you define terms or bring up equations or anything, you turn the kids loose to explore a particular topic, whether it be wave motion or momentum and so on.
Right.
During those explorations, you're off to the side and you just let them rip. But then you bring them together, and during a discussion phase, you ask them questions about what they saw, and they ask you questions. And it's during that phase that you introduce terminology, equations if there are any, and basically make sense out of what they saw.
Right. Now, I think I mentioned to you before, one of my big things, especially after college for about 10 years, in my 20s, I became really interested in the biography of inventors and discoverers and scientists. I just want to know how they did what they did. And I always find it so interesting how, like, Rutherford, he's the one that did the split light experiment, right? With the slits. Was that Rutherford?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, he must have looked nuts, right? I mean, he probably didn't have the terminology really to move him forward. He was coming up with a novel demonstration of a theory he had in his head that may or may not work. But it almost seemed like playing around the tool shop. Right. And so this hands-on working, I'm very interested in that. This hands-on kind of discursive learning where you're just kind of heuristically probing and doing trial and error. And it almost looks like play. It might be play, but it might lead to some, epiphany and discovery. And it seems like you're putting kids on the track of the tinkering scientist. Is that right? Am I thinking?
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think that's exactly. It is a form of play.
Right.
Form of play. And because that's why it's enjoyable.
Right.
To be thinking about possibilities and why does this work and what can I do to change this? I mean, it's intellectual, but I think in the essence of it is play.
Right.
Play.
Right. I've told you before how I felt very lucky as a kid because I had access to a pond and a creek and a forest and a field. And I had the freedom. My parents let me get lost. Right. So I was like a little native naturalist, and I was collecting things and studying things. And I didn't think I was a naturalist. I thought I was a kid. And I think I developed this theory that I was probably operating on default settings, that most kids probably have those same default settings, that they're excited by wet snails they find in a pond, right? Or a tadpole. It blows their mind, right? And I think that, is there a kind of a best or a playground for fostering scientific thinking in your mind?
Just what you described?
Oh, shoot. I answered my own question. No.
Okay. So my childhood paralleled yours. I had a wonderful childhood. Grew up in a small town.
Mhm.
and we'd disappear, and parents wouldn't worry about us.
Right.
We didn't even want to come in for lunch.
Right.
Such a great time. And we did things similar to what you described. We built huts, we built rafts, we explored old mines, all sorts of things, but it was a great learning experience. And then as I grew up, I had wonderful parents, teachers, and friends, and they nurtured me all the way along. They didn't know it perhaps, but with my dad, we built radios. We built a very basic X-ray machine. With a friend of mine, we built hot air balloons and rockets.
Right.
They were really bombs is what they were. My dad, being a pharmacist, had all the fixins to make that rocket fuel. And then my science teacher was like Dwayne Cool. I've got to mention his name. He was a life changer too. So I came from an incredibly nurturing background, and I'm so fortunate.
Right. Yeah, I like to hear the thing about the radio. Richard Feynman is one of my favorite teachers I never met, who was dead before I read his books and everything. But Richard Feynman, of course, he's considered the great physics teacher. And his background was that he had access to all of these electronic parts as a kid, radio parts, and he was taking apart TVs and radios and putting them back together again. And he got his interest in why things work. It developed into his obsession of, asking questions that people had pat answers for, but really weren't deep, well thought out answers, just the kind of conventional answers. And he thought that scientific thinking should fight convention. Actually using reason sometimes sounds unconventional and crazy. And he kind of proved that the thinking actually isn't always the pat answer the teacher has in the classroom. That good thinking will challenge that teacher sometimes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Feynman, I just read You're Joking, Mr. Feynman.
Isn't that great?
Oh, it's great. And I recall him fixing radios and just
right.
a great time, working with electronics and anything he could get his hands on. It was just amazing.
Yeah, for the people who don't know who we're talking about Richard Feynman, who was a Nobel Prize winning physicist who worked at Los Alamos. And his most famous claim to fame at Los Alamos was that he made they had a safe. And it was very slow time getting the information out of the safe to what the scientists needed because of security. So he as a practical joke, he cracked the safe at Los Alamos. That was, of course, the security people were very upset with him. But that was his style. He's like, well, that's a safe. I can crack it. And but he would study, like he'd watch ants and wonder why ants follow certain paths and just start messing with ants, And that was his thing. He just was a curious guy, and he's well worth reading the book. Surely You Must Be Joking, Dr. Feynman, I think it's called. But
it's a terrific read.
Oh, it really is. It was very inspiring for me. But we've talked about this, and you've written books about it. Tell us a little bit your feelings about how do you think there might be a conjunction with art and science and math, and it may be a proper conjunction?
I definitely do. At New Trier, a number of teachers got together to initiate what we call the Connections Project. So science, math, and art teachers came together to show that there are connections that are often not seen, not recognized between the disciplines. It turns out that this friend of mine at the Exploratorium called it hardening of the categories.
Right. That's a good way of putting it.
That we see things in boxes. Here's art, here's science, here's math. They're all insular, they do not connect. And in fact, they connect more than you would ever imagine. So the point of our Connections Project is we built almost 100 large-scale exhibits that showed those connections. So we had, color theory and the combination of physics and art. We had polarization and the kids made polarization art. The mathematicians built catenary arches, and all these things were interactive. Oh my God, we had, I'm trying to think of the name of the company, Aero Engineering sent us 2 large microwave dishes, gigantic microwave dishes that we turned into a whispering gallery.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
No, it was fabulous. And my colleagues there were just so stimulating and so pumped up to do this. It was just an amazing collaboration. And we did it for years, and we'd have shows. We'd travel to schools with some of the exhibits. We had a conic carnival, and the math department and the science department put all these exhibits that related to the conic sections in the gymnasium. And the math and science students would come in and interact with all these exhibits, but they demonstrated the linkages between the 2 disciplines. And so, you know, I guess a thing that got me going in college, I went to a lecture one night called "The Arts and Sciences, a False Dichotomy." And that could have been the start of my realization of the connections between disciplines.
Right, right. And one of my big teachers was Buckminster Fuller, who famously criticized humanity for the 20th century's obsession with specialization. He thought that early specialization breeds out generalized thinking. And he thought that Einstein was great because of his generalized thinking, that seeing whole pictures, seeing whole systems that might seemingly be unrelated. That's more of an artistic scope, like a panoramic vision. It's not a niche kind of cubbyhole. He was suggesting that the cubbyhole disciplines and how we were seeing more and more tiny divisions within disciplines, right? So where academics can't even talk to each other anymore because all they seem to be doing is inventing new language to describe their discipline, right? So they can't go to a colloquium with other professors in other disciplines and have a conversation unless it's so superficial, right? And he thought that was a disaster of over-specialization, that our brain was designed to be general in a sense. And it goes to my other question. I was a drugged kid for a while, one of the many drugged children put on Ritalin probably in 3rd, 4th grade. And the second psychiatrist that saw me, because my mom did not like what Ritalin was doing to me, he said, well, what does he do all day in school if the teachers are complaining? He goes, well, he draws, he's doodling. He goes, well, bring in the drawings. So she brought in this stack of drawings, right? And he goes, well, the problem with your son is he's an artist, right? So the psychologist said that the problem is he's an artist, which isn't a problem at all, of course. But it seems to me that when you say there's a convergence of art, science, and math, is it being lost on the school and on the social workers and our systems that maybe these boys, especially, you're talking about girls loving physics and getting physics, that's great. But it seems like girls don't have the challenge of being in school like young boys do, right? It's harder, I think, for boys who want to jump out of their skin sometimes in school. Would it be better for boys if they had a kind of this holistic approach to science, math, and art, where they might be working with their hands more and building things towards understanding instead of just doing endless worksheets?
Yep. Well, I'm down on endless worksheets, that's for certain. But yeah, I think that would be wonderful if boys and girls could share the same activities and not be embarrassed by it. If a guy is into the arts, let him do it. And they could, at the same time, they could be learning about physics. They could be learning about biology. I was just thinking about how biology informs engineering, for example. I mean, there's an example of where we take so many things from nature. Velcro comes to mind.
Right.
And use it in an engineering application. So anyway, getting back to your question, I think that would be just terrific if there could be an interdisciplinary approach to high school subjects.
You think that would have the efficacy of making kids like school more, for instance, and maybe feel comfortable in disciplines they felt they were off limits before? Like, what would be the benefit of that?
No, I think I'm trying to think of the phrase, but busy kids are happy kids. Right. I mean, one thing that I found with the explorations that Jim and I did is the discipline problem doesn't vanish, but it goes way down when you've got kids engaged. So any type of curriculum that gets kids involved, and instead of just listening, I think would go a long way to improving education in general.
Yeah, I don't remember you being a classroom manager. I don't remember you having to say, "Excuse me, I'm talking. Excuse me, sir, please stop chatting in the back." It never happened. It seemed like in your class. Maybe it did. I just don't remember.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It sure did. It wasn't a perfect situation, that's for certain.
Right.
But like I say, what I found was when the students were engaged in something mindfully, problems decreased greatly. You know, that they were not focused on goofing around. They were focused on learning something.
I was working in a Chicago public school where the school bought a truckload of computer monitors and computer systems, right? And they weren't used for more than maybe a couple of months, and they were out of date. And they went into I helped put them in a closet, and they never were used again. And there was a lot of money involved in these computers. Okay. It seems that they're always saying that schools that just had more money, education would happen, that schools would get better. And of course, it makes sense to a degree that more money, more beautiful things can be done. But what a lot of it you and Jim were doing were kind of like stuff you came to school with duct tape and plywood. And I have a feeling maybe you weren't given a budget to make a lot of this stuff. How much money does it take to bring great physics teaching to a school?
That's a tough call. To answer, I'm going to address your comment. We brought in all sorts of things, toys, and duct tape is not that far off. We brought in a lot of low-tech things. Didn't cost a lot of money. There is a point though that you need equipment. You can't do certain experiments without a strobe light, let's say,
right,
or without some type of computer interfacing. I mean, there's only so much you can do with kitchen physics,
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a balance, but here's what I think is, I've always felt that when you bring things in from the outside, that's not a black box, it's more effective. If a student sees that, gee, this is not some fancy electronic device that I don't know, I have no idea how it works. If you bring in something that is commonplace, I think it's much more beneficial.
Right. Interesting. So, yeah. So do you think that the schools are being given what they need to succeed now?
Are they getting?
You think schools in America are being given what they need? Now, you travel to Europe a lot. What's the big difference you're seeing between the European schools and the American schools?
Different in, I think, well, the ones I've seen, it's more of they lean more on experiential kinds of things than we do. I think we're still, and I've been out of the classroom for quite a while, so I really am not in a position to judge. And I haven't seen that many classroom situations in America or in Europe, but I just sense that there's still too much chalk talk, the teacher-centered learning. And,
right.
Like I say, forgive me, I'm sort of talking without that knowledge, direct knowledge, but that's when I was teaching, that seemed to be the case, that the teacher as the center of the classroom predominated,
Right. Okay. And so I'm going to have you continue to talk about things you know nothing about. So in terms of schools of education, now you went to teachers college. You were a certified physics teacher, right? Do you think teachers colleges are doing more good than bad right now? Is there any kind of situation you think that where the teachers colleges could do better, or are they just killing it? Are they doing a great job?
Again, I don't have any recent experience, but anecdotally, when I was taking an education course, it was on individualized instruction. That's a course title. We did nothing individually. It was a lecture course all the way through. I thought that was how ironic. We're supposed to learn about how to individualize your class, and this professor just talked the entire time.
Right.
That if I judged schools of education on that, I wouldn't give them a very high mark. But I sense that there's been a lot of improvement. And one thing I can, an example I can use, I was involved and still am in the American Association of Physics Teachers. Mm-hmm. And done a great deal in improving physics education in the high schools and at the university level. So I think progress is being made at all levels, including college teaching. You know, I think
right.
It's moved away from the teacher-centered classroom. Let's put it that way.
Right, right. A former art student of mine, he went on to go to RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design. And then he felt as though art really wasn't for him. He became a model for a while in New York City. And then he went to an architecture school in Illinois. And then he decided he wanted to learn how to build airplanes with his bare hands. So he went and worked on the factory floor of a startup company making airplanes and became a tool and die maker. He finally went to an engineering college, New Mexico mining school. I think it was called a mining. It was a mining school. It was a college. And when he walked into that engineering department, they found out that he knew tool and die and knew how to like work with his hands. They had to run the fabrication shop at the college. Okay. He started a rocket program that won against the Canadians. They built these big 18-foot long rockets that went really, really high. And now he's working. He's one of the, he's grown in the company very quickly. He's one of the lead engineers now on the new rocket engines for Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin rocket company. And he was my art student, but it seems like, but the kid had an open mind and followed a path, and he always wanted to be involved with rockets, but he diverted into art for a while because he thought maybe that wasn't accessible. But he had to do it with his hands. He had to go and build airplanes on the factory floor as a blue collar worker. And then he said, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to be an engineer. And he got a job at Blue Origin right away after that. So there's so many different paths for kids. I think that it's not linear, right? And maybe it shouldn't be linear. Do you think there's a problem with the way we have it organized right now, where 18-year-old kids are expected to go and become sociology, anthropology majors in big state schools or liberal arts schools? And is there a smarter way to do it in America than just it's either college or drudgery? It seems like that was when we were in Barrington, that was kind of the thing was if you weren't college bound, you were kind of a loser. It was kind of harsh. And it seems go ahead.
Yeah, I think I would say for the most part, there has been in the past only two paths, right? Either college or whatever, blue collar work, and nothing in between.
Right.
And that's a pity that decision has to be made. Your anecdote about this guy that went into rocket design and so on shows how things can happen when someone's allowed to try different things rather than being pigeonholed. Okay, I'm going to have to go to college and I'm going to be a math major. That's it. You know, I think we're sort of forced, or students are sort of forced to make a decision too early in life,
right?
As far as what their livelihood is going to be,
right? And they're not, especially men, I don't think are very mature between the ages of 18 and 24. I think that we're just still kind of proto-humans in a sense. We're kind of a little too sensual. I don't think our brains are developed. In fact, I think we know their brains aren't developed, right? Young men.
Right.
So
case in point, I thought I was going to be an engineer when I was leaving high school. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what it meant. I really didn't know what engineering meant. I just said, well, I think I'll go into electrical engineering.
Right.
And then luckily, I shifted into physics, and nothing wrong with electrical engineering. It's just that I had this predetermined notion of what I was going to do with my life, and I had no basis for that decision, none. You know, right. I never met an electrical engineer, never saw a movie about electrical engineers. So there you go. I'm glad I didn't follow that path, as it turns out.
Right. But yeah, and that it used to be, and not that the past was ideal, but it used to be there was mentors, right? That kids knew if the kid wanted to be a blacksmith, he'd go apprentice at a blacksmith's and walk in the footsteps of a blacksmith and steel with his eyes and learn the techniques and the trade. And we've kind of gotten away from that medieval model of the guilds and the trades and the apprentices and the journeymen. And kids are just thrown into, school to expert class, right? There's no in between of the unions still have it to some extent, having apprenticeships and things. But I think maybe there's something lost with that. The kids can't shadow people and see what a career is about before they make the investment into going into it.
Right.
Well, you have a demonstration for us. Do you want to do it?
You want me to do it?
I do. I think everybody wants to see a demonstration. Yeah, please do. Yeah, do it. Explain what you're going to do first, so we understand what the hell's going on.
Okay, so I'm fascinated by wave phenomena, specifically light and sound. And what I've got here is something that came out of quarantine, basically. And it has to do with flashing lights. That we live in a world where most of the artificial lighting around us is not constant, but is constantly flashing. But the flash rate is too high for us to detect. In fact, anything that flashes faster than 30 times a second, we don't detect it. Mm-hmm. There are ways to determine if something's flashing. You can move it quickly before the eye.
Right.
Can you see that that's broken up into pieces?
Right, but of course we're looking through a strobe light ourselves, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
You're right.
So anyway, this little neon lamp is flashing 120 times a second.
Right.
Because it's being powered by 60 cycle AC current. So one way we can determine if something's flashing is move it quickly past our eyes, but there is a more efficient way, and it turns out a way that has great applications, and that is by using a solar cell and a small amplifier speaker. Now what the solar cell does is it converts light into electrical signals. Right. Signals are then amplified and come out the speaker.
So it sees the light. The solar panel is like seeing the light. It's sensing the light.
It's seeing the light. That's absolutely correct. We're seeing or hearing the light after we see the light.
Right.
I've got a laser.
Oh yeah, very solid knocking sound.
Yeah, it's not very exciting. Not very exciting, though. But if we go back to the neon light.
Right. You could hear it buzzing.
Or here's something that we don't see anymore much of is a compact fluorescent.
Right. Yeah, it's like a buzzing sound.
Not terribly exciting.
Right.
But some other things, household items that are a bit more interesting are tea lights.
Yeah, I got millions of those. Wow.
Yes. That little tea light is capable of producing that sound.
That's insane.
What's causing that, there's a little microprocessor, a little chip in there that can produce the flash rate. And that manifests itself in the sound you hear. Now,
is that what makes the flickering effect of the tea light? Is that microprocessor? Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
It's not very nice. Rather harsh. Just another tea light. And so you could spend a lot of time just going through different tea lights and see what they do. Oh, here's my favorite. This is a little, novelty colored device.
Right. That's great. But the thing is, that's the information is the same, right? Like what you're hearing in terms of frequency, it's just translating from a sound frequency from a light frequency. So the information is pretty similar, right? Or the same?
Yes, exactly. Now, it turns out that, like I say, this is my smartphone. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
And so all displays have their own pitch.
It doesn't sound friendly.
Not friendly at all.
No, I suspected it wasn't.
And finally, I found this in the basement just a couple days ago.
I love those.
This is just a novelty light with fiber optics at the end.
Right.
Listen to this.
That's awesome.
They're all sort of space age sounds.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, what value does this kind of thing have? The fact that light can carry information, at least different sounds. Well, it's about that way back in 1850, Alexander Graham Bell not only invented the telephone, but he came up with the idea of the photophone. And what that is, this is a modern version of his device. I've got a balloon, a rubber membrane stretched over this little canister, and attached to it, I have a mirror chip.
Right.
And a laser.
Now, yeah.
Laser on the mirror chip. Let's see where can you see that?
I see it. It's on the left hand corner of the screen, by the gold framed window.
There it is.
Yeah. Right? I see it. Yeah.
And we don't see it. Just a moment. I don't think I can do this.
Could you put in that black thing? Oh, the black thing.
That's what I'm trying to do.
But you move the black screen off the screen. Oh, there! It's on the green wall right now. I see on the green wall the laser.
It's on the green wall. I should have. Okay, let's just try one more thing.
Yeah, move that back. That's good. Yeah, it'll be better on the black.
Okay, let's see what we. Can you see
I see it. I see it fine. I see it.
All right, now I'm going to speak into this.
Okay, go ahead.
Or make a noise.
No way. Look at that.
Hi, Mike.
So he made it an analog or analogy to the eardrum. It's like an eardrum you made, right, with the mirror?
Exactly.
Right. It's like a membrane that vibrates.
It's a membrane just like in your ear.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the question, and this is what Bell addressed. He figured that light, that varying light, carried information. And he actually made it work. He came up with a very primitive solar cell, able to transmit voice via a light beam. And the problem with it is, of course, there were no fiber optics in, so the beam had to travel through the air. And of course, there's all sorts of pollutants and birds and everything else, so it never came to happen. But in theory, he had it all figured out. And let's try something. I'm going to speak so that the laser beam hits the solar cell. Let's see if there's really any information, intelligible information in that light beam.
Okay.
Oh
my God.
But it's there.
Yeah. No, it's like the can and the string, but like, Star Wars. It's like way more advanced. You could hear a voice. No, you could hear a voice.
Can you hear that? Yeah. Amazing, isn't it?
Could you imagine how exciting that would have been the first time he did it? How they would have been blown away by that.
Yeah, I'm still blown away by it.
yeah.
It's quite amazing. But now here's the wonderful thing, that Bell introduced an idea that now brings us streaming. It brings us digital information. Virtually everything that comes to our homes and offices is carried by light. And to demonstrate that, it's incredibly simple. I've got a flavor radio from Radio Shack that dates back in the 70s. See, I need a station. Not exactly hi-fi. And I'm going to plug this into the phone jack.
What's that? Oh, the light.
This is just a cable like you have for your earphones.
Right.
But at the end, instead of the earphones, I've got a little LED.
Mm-hmm.
Now, probably it's not possible for you to see that it's flashing.
I see the light. I see the light. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that flashing light is responding to the guy.
It's getting a signal from the radio and hitting the light. Yeah. So it's vibrating. The light's vibrating at a frequency.
At the same as the announcer.
Okay, good. We've established that.
Unbelievable. Listen.
Right. The sound is coming off the object on the table, not the radio.
Coming out of this.
Yeah, right. Right. You've created a link between the two things via light.
Now, this is a rather crude way of doing it. Here's what's actually used in light wave communications. This is a laser.
Mm-hmm.
I can get a. Oh. Come on. You know what they always say at work before class?
Right, exactly. Oh my God, listen to that. High fidelity.
Much clearer.
Yeah.
And so anyway, this is the way it's transmitted in reality. This is a large fiber, a large optical fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And when you shine light in one end, I don't think you can see it coming through.
It's gorgeous. It's green. Yeah, it's awesome.
But look how it's reflected internally. Can you see how it's bouncing around inside?
It looks like a sine wave bouncing up and down.
It looks like a sine wave, and actually, right there, look at that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
You see how you pipe the light around this fiber? Now, this is even more delicate fiber.
Oh wow! Look at that.
Yeah, and this is more akin to what they actually use. But I'm using this great big.
That's a solid tube of like acrylic, right?
It's solid acrylic.
Right. Just I want people to know at home, it's not a hollow tube of surgical. It's not surgical tubing. It's solid.
It's solid, and that's why
I could do it because you're moving through that medium.
That's why you can do it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to send the light through the fiber.
Right. And we want to encourage people at home to do this, right?
Yeah.
Do this.
All right. I don't know if that's within the camera or if you can hear it.
I hear it. Is it actually translating that?
We're sending the light from this LED through the fiber.
No way.
And it's hitting the solar cell, and we're hearing it through the speaker.
Jeez, that's awesome. That really is fantastic.
And that's the basis for, just a comment about the anti-science movement.
Mm-hmm.
Just think of what you would not have in your life if it were not for science and technology. Just think of everything that surrounds you right now. This is case in point that you would be deprived of if science had not progressed and developed as a result of science. All these developments have come to pass. It's quite amazing, I think, that.
Yeah, it's a humanity. It might be the central humanity. It's a big one, isn't it?
It's a big one. Now, I know, as they say in showbiz, get the hook. But I've got one more here that I just think that this you can do at home. This you can do at home. This is a cup. And these are pencils. This is a pencil with a needle. That's a regular pin.
That's a pin. That's just a pin on the end of the pencil.
Yeah, that's it.
Uh-huh.
All right. And this is
Stuck in an eraser. It's stuck in a pink eraser, right?
it's stuck in a pink eraser.
Right. Okay. I just want to make sure people at home.
So now,
is that really, am I hearing that record?
yep. Let's see if I can get the bugle. There's a bugle in here.
Oh my God. That's just great. So the cup is vibrating and amplifying the signal, right?
Yeah, without the cup, you wouldn't hear it.
Right.
So this is vibrating. It's transmitted up the pencil.
It's pushing the air. It's pushing the air sound.
And this increased surface area amplifies.
Right. Right. Fantastic. That is simple, man. That's great.
Okay, now this is it. This is absolutely it, but I got to do it.
Okay.
This little Volkswagen bus is called a sound wagon.
Uh-huh.
By the way, in terms of going back to how we were talking about how Jim and I teach, the first thing we do is try to engage the kids before they go and explore, just to get them pumped up. All right. So this engagement phase for sound might include the cup record player and this device. Now this device has a speaker in the top. This little Volkswagen microbus has a speaker in the top, a phono cartridge and needle on the bottom, and
no way.
little Sam and Dave.
No kidding. So it's like just the opposite of a record player. The player is moving and the record's staying still.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, that's brilliant. And it's turned at the right turn angle, and it's got the right velocity to match the sound, the speed of the sound. That's fantastic.
And
mostly.
You mentioned something that I just learned how it works. The speed has to be adjusted, as you pointed out.
Right.
Okay. So the way it's done is there's a little LED in there, and there's a shade that moves in front of the LED, reducing the light intensity, which then controls the speed of the motor.
Oh.
It's optically, the speed's optically adjusted, which is just mind blowing. But
does it self adjust, or do you have to who calibrates it? Does it calibrate itself?
Yeah, it does. It calibrates.
Oh, way.
Yeah, it's a marvel, really.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are the type of engagement activities that Jim and I would do before we send them into the lab.
Well, I'm engaged. That's really cool. Yeah, and it seems like these aren't really the lost tools of learning. This is, thank God. I mean, really, thank God for YouTube in the sense that people are sharing more than ever, right? I mean, when you started back in the 70s, how did teachers communicate with each other? If they had a great idea to teach, what would you have to do?
Well, what we did is we go to, and we still do, but go to conferences.
Right.
The Chicago area has just a wonderful group of sharing teacher groups, and we meet monthly, and that's how we get the information out. The teachers show what they've come up with, and still, even with all the advantages of the internet, that personal connection is really important. So these meetings and conferences, the sharing continues.
Right. And you would think that it probably would help the professionalism of the trade, because there's a kind of ego in a good way of look what I did, look what we're doing here. And I think that would be an incentive for a teacher, right? To show his peers or her peers how excited their kids are, the things they're doing in their school.
Oh yeah, it makes you feel good, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you share, yes.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Mr. C. I was thrilled to share you with the rest of the world, because you came to me, or I came to you in Facebook a while back, because we were in the network of alumnus, and we started talking, and we got on the phone with each other, and I didn't consider interviewing you, but then I started the show. I was like, well, you're the one I want to talk to. And then I got this outpouring of people from my high school in New Trier who said, "Oh my God, Mr. C, I want to hear." People brought their kids to watch videos of you that I put up there because they're so excited to see you again. So I just want you to know that you had a very long reach on people, and I think that's a great example of what great teaching could do. It just you have this long reach in society, right? It's pretty amazing.
Well, Mike, thank you for the kind words. And it really has been a privilege and an honor to spend time with you and the people watching this show. It really has been great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we're going to get off of Facebook now, but I will mention that next week we have the award-winning auteur filmmaker, Kimberly Harris, will be with us, and she is just a treat, and she's been a great acting coach, teacher, and now she's an auteur filmmaker, and she's great. You won't want to miss it.
Pretty amazing, huh?